Captain Jake Morrison stared at the holographic message floating above his desk for the third time that morning. The crystalline symbols of the Galactic Harmony Council shimmered in the air, casting blue light across his weathered face. Beside him, Dr. Lisa Hamilton adjusted her reading glasses and leaned forward to study the alien script. "They want us at the core systems," Lisa said quietly, her voice carrying a mix of wonder and concern. "In 150 years of human contact with alien life, no one from Earth has ever been invited this deep into galactic space." Jake rubbed his jaw, feeling the stubble that reminded him of his military days. At 42, he had seen enough combat to know when something felt wrong. "The timing bothers me. 3 outer rim colonies go silent in 2 weeks. Refugee ships streaming into human space with stories about something called the Devourers. And suddenly the Council wants to talk." Lisa pulled up her tablet and scrolled through the latest intelligence reports. As Earth's leading xenobiologist and cultural anthropologist, she had spent years studying the peaceful species that dominated the galaxy. The refugees all tell the same story. Entire worlds consumed, not conquered. Ships that eat metal and energy. Life forms that grow stronger by devouring everything in their path. "And the Council thinks they can negotiate with something like that?" Jake asked, though he already knew the answer. The galactic civilizations had evolved beyond warfare centuries ago. They solved conflicts through discussion, trade agreements, and cultural exchange. The idea of an enemy that could not be reasoned with was alien to them. The transport ship Endeavour departed Earth 3 days later. Jake and Lisa spent the journey studying everything they could about the Harmony Station and the species they would encounter. The station orbited an artificial star at the galactic core, a marvel of engineering that housed representatives from over 300 peaceful civilizations. As they traveled deeper into galactic space, they encountered more refugee ships. Families from dozens of different species crowded into vessels never meant for long journeys. Jake watched through the viewports as alien children pressed their faces against windows, looking back at homes they would never see again. One ship caught their attention. It was barely holding together, its hull scarred and melted in places that suggested unimaginable heat. The pilot was an insectoid being from the hexapod collective, one of the few militaristic species in the galaxy. When Jake requested permission to board, the pilot's compound eyes focused on him with something that looked like relief. "You are from the Death World," the pilot clicked in broken galactic standard. "Good, maybe you understand. They do not listen, they do not speak, they do not negotiate. They come and they eat everything. My world had defense fleets, orbital platforms, ground armies, all gone in 6 hours." Lisa exchanged glances with Jake. The Hexapod Collective maintained one of the largest military forces in the galaxy, though they rarely used it. If their defenses had fallen in hours, the Devourers were far more dangerous than the initial report suggested. "How many ships did they have?" Jake asked, his military training taking over. The pilot's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of distress in hexapod body language. "Not ships, creatures. Living things the size of cities that swim through space like your ocean fish. They ate our defense platforms first, then our ships, then our cities. The metal made them stronger. The energy made them faster. The human delegation provided the refugee ship with supplies and escort to the nearest human outpost. As the Endeavour continued toward the galactic core, Jake found himself reviewing Earth's defensive capabilities. Unlike the peaceful species of the galaxy, humans had never stopped preparing for war. Even in times of peace, Earth maintained fleets, weapons research, and military academies. "They invited us because they are scared," Lisa said during their final briefing before reaching Harmony Station. For the first time in their recorded history, the Council faces something that cannot be solved through diplomacy. Jake nodded, studying the tactical reports. "They invited us because we are from a death world. Because Earth produced a species that knows how to fight for survival. The question is whether they are ready to hear what we have to say." The Harmony Station appeared on their screens like a jewel floating in space. It was beautiful beyond description, its crystalline spires and flowing architecture a testament to galactic cooperation and peace. Thousands of ships from hundreds of worlds docked at its ports, creating a bustling center of trade and diplomacy. But Jake noticed what the station lacked. No defensive platforms surrounded it. No patrol ships guarded its approaches. No shields protected its delicate structures. The entire station was a monument to the belief that the galaxy was a safe and peaceful place. "It is magnificent," Lisa whispered as they docked, and completely defenseless. Their escort met them at the airlock. Commander Vex Thule of the Hexapod Collective stood over 2 meters tall, his chitinous armor gleaming under the station's soft lights. Unlike the refugee pilot they had met, this hexapod moved with military precision and showed no signs of fear. "Humans," he clicked in perfect galactic standard. "I have heard of your species. You come from a world that breeds warriors. The Council hopes you might offer perspective on this devourer threat." Jake extended his hand in the human gesture of greeting, watching as the alien warrior studied the movement before carefully extending one clawed appendage to touch his palm. "We are honored by the invitation, Commander, though I suspect we may not be what the Council expects." Vex Thule's compound eyes glittered with what might have been amusement. Perhaps that is exactly what they need. As they walked through the station's corridors, Jake and Lisa marveled at the diversity of life around them. Gaseous beings floated in containment fields, crystal entities that sang in harmonic frequencies, plant-like creatures that moved with the grace of dancers. All of them radiated an aura of peace and contentment that was alien to human experience. "They have never known real threat," Lisa observed quietly. "Look at their body language, their movements. These are species that have evolved beyond the need for vigilance." Jake noted the same thing. Every human who entered this place would instinctively catalog exits, potential weapons, defensive positions. These aliens moved through their environment with complete trust that nothing would harm them. It was both beautiful and terrifying. "The Council chambers are ahead," Vex Thule informed them. "High Arbiter Zenthka has called for emergency session. Representatives from all major civilizations will attend. You should know that many are concerned about your presence here." "Concerned how?" Lisa asked, though she suspected she already knew. "They fear you," the commander stated simply. "Earth is classified as a death world, a planet so hostile that it breeds unnaturally dangerous life forms. Many council members believe that inviting humans here was a mistake." Jake felt a familiar weight settle on his shoulders. Throughout human history, his species had been seen as dangerous, unpredictable, violent. Even among the stars, that reputation followed them. "And what do you think, Commander?" Vex Thule paused before the massive doors of the council chambers. Beyond them, they could hear the soft sounds of hundreds of alien voices discussing the crisis in dozens of different languages. "I think," he clicked slowly, "that sometimes the galaxy needs dangerous things to protect it from even more dangerous things." The doors opened with a whisper of displaced air, revealing the most magnificent sight either human had ever witnessed. The council chambers stretched out before them like the inside of a vast sphere, with platforms and alcoves arranged in perfect harmony. Hundreds of alien beings floated, perched or rested on structures designed for their specific physiologies. At the center of it all, High Arbiter Zenthka hung suspended in a framework of living crystal. The being was beautiful in an otherworldly way, its translucent form pulsing with soft light that seemed to respond to its emotions. When it spoke, its voice resonated through the chamber like distant music. "Welcome, representatives of Earth," the High Arbiter sang. "We gather in these dark times to seek wisdom and solutions to a threat unlike any our civilization has faced. Your species brings perspective from a world that knows struggle and conflict. We hope you will share your knowledge with us." Jake and Lisa took their places on the platform designated for them, feeling the weight of hundreds of alien gazes. Many of those gazes held fear, others curiosity, and a few showed something that might have been hope. As the High Arbiter began to outline the current crisis, both humans realized they were about to witness something unprecedented in galactic history. For the first time in millennia, the peaceful species of the galaxy were about to learn what it meant to face an enemy that could not be reasoned with, negotiated with, or understood, and they were looking to the dangerous species from the death world to show them how to survive. The first hour of the council session passed like a strange dream. Jake Morrison had attended military briefings where generals discussed the movement of armies and the deployment of weapons capable of destroying cities. He had sat through diplomatic meetings where the fate of colonies hung on carefully chosen words. But nothing had prepared him for this. Ambassador Kill 9, a gaseous being from the Nebula Confederation, floated in his containment field and spoke in harmonics that the translation matrix rendered as flowing poetry. The approaching entities represent a philosophical challenge to our understanding of existence. Perhaps they consume matter and energy because they lack the spiritual enlightenment to find sustenance in peaceful contemplation. Lisa Hamilton gripped the edge of her platform, fighting the urge to interrupt. As a scientist, she understood the value of theoretical discussion, but the refugee ships they had encountered told a different story. The Devourers were not lacking spiritual enlightenment. They were apex predators operating on a galactic scale. "We propose a cultural exchange mission," continued another representative, this one a plant-like entity whose leaves rustled with each word. "If we can understand their motivations, their social structure, their artistic expressions, we might find common ground for peaceful coexistence." Jake felt something cold settle in his stomach. These beings were discussing the total annihilation of entire worlds as if it were a minor cultural misunderstanding. He glanced at Commander Vexthul, who remained motionless on his own platform. Even the warrior species seemed paralyzed by the Council's approach. High Arbiter Zenthka pulsed with gentle light as he responded to each suggestion. "These are thoughtful proposals. We must also consider economic incentives. Perhaps the entities consume worlds because they lack access to proper trade networks. We could offer them resource-sharing agreements." A crystalline being chimed in with musical tones. "Education programs might be effective. If we could teach them sustainable harvesting techniques, they might learn to take only what they need rather than consuming entire ecosystems." Lisa leaned toward Jake and whispered, "They are talking about creatures that eat planets like a human might eat an apple, and they want to offer them college courses." Her voice carried a mix of disbelief and growing frustration. The debate continued for another hour. Each species offered solutions based on their own peaceful nature. Meditation techniques to calm aggressive tendencies, art therapy to channel destructive impulses into creative expression, diplomatic immunity to encourage the Devourers to participate in galactic government. Then the emergency alert sounded. The chamber fell silent as a holographic display materialized at the center of the sphere. The image showed a star system on the outer rim, its 4 worlds orbiting a yellow sun not unlike Earth's. As they watched, massive shadows moved across the display. "This is happening now," announced a mechanical voice from the station's communication array. "The Thanos system, population of 12 billion, 4 inhabited worlds, 3 space stations, mining operations throughout the asteroid belt." The shadows resolved into shapes that defied easy description. They were organic, flowing like enormous sea creatures swimming through the vacuum of space, but they were vast beyond comprehension, some larger than moons. They moved with purpose toward the innermost planet. Jake watched in horror as the first creature reached the planet's atmosphere. Instead of landing or descending, it began to feed. The planet's surface changed color as atmosphere, water, and land were consumed. The creature grew larger, its movements becoming faster and more coordinated. "The defense fleets are engaging," the voice reported. Tiny specks of light appeared around the creatures, representing warships armed with the most advanced weapons the peaceful civilizations could create. Energy beams and projectile weapons struck the Devourers with no apparent effect. Within minutes, the weapons fire stopped. The defense fleets were gone, consumed along with everything else. The creatures moved to the second planet, then the third. Each world they devoured made them larger and faster. By the time they reached the 4th planet, they moved like living lightning through space. The entire process took 6 hours. When it was over, the Thanos system contained nothing but empty space and a few scattered asteroids. 12 billion lives, 4 worlds, and countless generations of civilization had been erased as if they had never existed. The council chamber remained silent for long minutes after the transmission ended. Finally, High Arbiter Zenthka spoke. His crystalline form dimmed with what appeared to be grief. "This tragedy reinforces the urgent need for diplomatic contact. We must reach out to these entities before more lives are lost." "Diplomatic contact?" The words escaped Jake's lips before he could stop them. Every eye in the chamber turned toward the human platform. He felt Lisa's hand touch his arm in warning, but the damage was done. "He was committed now, Captain Morrison," the High Arbiter sang gently. "You have something to contribute to our discussion?" Jake stood, his movement causing ripples of unease throughout the chamber. Humans were larger and more physically imposing than most galactic species, and his military bearing made him seem even more threatening. "With respect, High Arbiter, you just watched 12 billion beings die. The defense fleets that tried to protect them lasted maybe 10 minutes. And you want to send diplomats? A collective gasp rose from the assembled representatives. Several of the smaller species actually retreated further into their alcoves. The idea of challenging the High Arbiter's wisdom was beyond their cultural understanding. Dr. Hamilton rose beside him, her scientific training overriding her diplomatic caution. The entities we just observed display classic predator behavior. They hunt, they feed, they reproduce. This is not a cultural misunderstanding or a failure of communication. This is biology. But surely, Ambassador Kill9 interjected, his gaseous form swirling with agitation. All intelligent life must be capable of reason. The universe itself tends toward harmony and understanding. No, Jake said simply. It does not. The universe is hostile, dangerous, and filled with things that will kill you without hesitation or remorse. My species knows this because we come from a world that tried to kill us every single day for millions of years. The temperature in the chamber seemed to drop. Jake could see fear growing in the alien faces around him, but he continued, driven by the images of the dying worlds and the memory of the refugee ships. Earth has ice ages that last for thousands of years, volcanoes that can block out the sun, storms that can level entire continents, animals that hunt in packs and see humans as food, diseases that kill billions, asteroids that hit without warning, and that is just the natural disasters. Lisa stepped forward, her voice calm but carrying the weight of scientific authority. Humans survived by becoming the most dangerous thing on our planet. We learned to hunt in coordinated groups. We developed weapons and tactics. We studied our enemies and found ways to kill them before they could kill us. This is precisely why many council members opposed your invitation. A crystal entity chimed nervously. Your species represents everything we have evolved beyond. Violence, aggression, the primitive mindset that sees threat in every shadow. Jake turned to face the speaker directly. And because you evolved beyond those things, you are helpless when something like the Devourers arrives. You have no weapons that can hurt them, no tactics that can stop them, no understanding of how predators think or behave. So what do you propose? High Arbiter Zenthka asked, his tone carefully neutral. What would your violent species do in this situation? The question hung in the air like a challenge. Jake felt the weight of every gaze in the chamber, the fear and disgust and desperate hope all focused on him. This was the moment that would define humanity's place in the galaxy. We would study them, he said quietly. Learn their weaknesses, their behavior patterns, their life cycle. We would develop weapons specifically designed to exploit those weaknesses. We would create strategies to divide them, trap them, or lure them into disadvantageous positions. And then, the High Arbiter pressed. Jake met the alien leader's crystalline gaze without flinching. Then we would kill them. All of them. Before they could kill us. The silence that followed was absolute. Even the gentle humming of the station's systems seemed to pause. Jake could see the horror in the faces around him. The fundamental inability of these peaceful beings to comprehend the casual way he discussed extinction. Lisa placed her hand on his arm, a gesture of support that also served as a gentle restraint. What Captain Morrison is describing is survival behavior. When faced with an existential threat that cannot be reasoned with, the only logical response is the complete elimination of that threat. But the moral implications, gasped a plant-like being, to deliberately cause the death of entire species. How do you live with such thoughts? Jake looked around the chamber, seeing the fear and revulsion in every face. These beings had created a beautiful, peaceful civilization based on cooperation and understanding. They had transcended the brutal realities that shaped human development, and now those very realities were coming to destroy everything they had built. We live with it, he said simply, by staying alive. The council chamber erupted in chaos. Representatives from dozens of species began speaking at once, their voices creating a cacophony of fear, outrage, and disbelief. Jake Morrison remained standing on the human platform, feeling the weight of hundreds of alien stares focused on him with a mixture of horror and fascination. High Arbiter Zenthka pulsed with rapid flashes of light, a sign of extreme agitation in his crystalline species. Captain Morrison, you speak of genocide as casually as others might discuss weather patterns. How can any civilized being contemplate such actions? Because, Jake replied, his voice cutting through the noise like a blade. Civilization is a luxury that only exists when someone is willing to fight for it. You have beautiful cities, art, philosophy, and technology because your ancestors eliminated the threats that would have destroyed them. You just did it so long ago that you forgot. Dr. Lisa Hamilton stepped forward, her scientific training allowing her to maintain composure in the face of the alien hostility. The Council requested our perspective as representatives of a death world. This is that perspective. On Earth, species that cannot adapt to threats become extinct. It is not cruel or evil. It is simply reality. But you speak of murder, gasped Ambassador Kilnine, his gaseous form swirling with agitation. The deliberate ending of life on a massive scale. How is this different from what the Devourers themselves do? Jake's military training took over, his voice becoming calm and professional. The difference is purpose. The Devourers kill to feed. We would kill to protect. They destroy because it benefits them. We would destroy to prevent them from destroying others. Philosophical distinctions chimed a crystalline being. Violence is violence regardless of motivation. No, Lisa interjected sharply. Intent matters. A surgeon cuts into flesh to heal. A murderer cuts into flesh to harm. The action appears similar, but the purpose and outcome are entirely different. Commander Vex Thule, who had remained silent throughout the debate, finally spoke. His clicking voice carried the authority of a warrior species that had earned respect through strength. The humans speak truth. My people know war, though we have not fought in generations. But we remember. When predators come, you do not negotiate. You do not educate. You fight or you die. The chamber fell silent at his words. The Hexapod Collective was one of the few militaristic species in the Council, and their endorsement of human thinking sent ripples of fear through the peaceful representatives. You would have us become like them, accused a plant-like delegate, its leaves rustling with emotion. You would corrupt our civilization with thoughts of violence and death. Jake shook his head. We would have you survive. Your civilization, your art, your philosophy, your peaceful way of life, all of it will disappear if the Devourers are not stopped. They do not care about your moral superiority. They see you as food. But what you propose would make us no better than barbarians, protested another delegate. We would lose our souls in the process of saving our bodies. You would not have to do anything, Lisa said quietly. That is what Captain Morrison and I are trying to tell you. Humanity has already prepared for this threat. The silence that followed was different from before. Where there had been outrage and fear, now there was something approaching terror. High Arbiter Zenthka's crystalline form dimmed to barely a whisper of light. Prepared how? He asked. Though his tone suggested he was not sure he wanted to know the answer, Jake exchanged a glance with Lisa, seeing his own grim determination reflected in her eyes. They had reached the point of no return. Earth has been monitoring the Devourer advance since the first reports reached human space 2 months ago. Our military has been developing countermeasures, weapons, and tactical strategies. 2 months? Ambassador Kilnine's voice rose in pitch. The Council has been aware of this threat for barely 2 weeks. How did you know? Because we listened to refugees instead of dismissing them as hysterical, Lisa replied bluntly. Because we analyze threat patterns instead of hoping they will go away. Because humans assume the worst and prepare for it. Jake activated his personal data pad, projecting holographic displays that showed ship movements, weapon deployments, and strategic analysis. Human fleets have been repositioning for 3 weeks. We have prototype weapons in testing. Evacuation routes have been planned for civilian populations. The data stream showed a level of military preparation that shocked the peaceful species. Thousands of warships, weapons capable of cracking moons, defensive networks that spanned multiple star systems. It was the infrastructure of a civilization that had never stopped preparing for war. This is horrifying, whispered a delegate from the Crystal Harmony. Your entire species lives in a state of constant preparation for violence. Our entire species lives, Jake corrected grimly, which is more than can be said for the Thanos system. High Arbiter Zenthka studied the human data with growing alarm. These weapons you have developed, they are designed specifically to combat the Devourer entities, Lisa nodded. Based on biological analysis of recovered tissue samples and behavioral observation, we believe the entities have several exploitable weaknesses. Certain frequency ranges disrupt their cellular cohesion. Specific energy types can overload their feeding mechanisms. You experimented on them? The question came from several delegates simultaneously, their horror evident in multiple languages. We analyzed every piece of data available, Jake confirmed. We studied their attack patterns, their movement speeds, their growth rates. We know how they hunt, how they feed, how they reproduce. And we know how to kill them. Commander Vexthul leaned forward with obvious interest. What have you discovered? They are not as invulnerable as they appear, Lisa explained. They require specific conditions to maintain their cohesion. Disrupt those conditions and they become vulnerable to conventional weapons. The key is coordination and overwhelming force applied at precise moments. You sound as if you have already planned their destruction, observed the High Arbiter, his crystalline form pulsing with deep unease. Jake met his gaze directly. We have. The moment the first human colony was threatened, Earth began preparing for total war. We have contingency plans for every possible scenario, from single-entity encounters to full-scale invasion. But you need council approval to act in galactic space, protested a delegate. You cannot simply deploy military forces without proper authorization. Actually, Lisa said with cold precision, we can. Earth's colonial charter includes provisions for defensive action in the face of existential threats. The moment the Devourers entered human space, those provisions became active. The implication hit the chamber like a physical blow. The humans were not asking permission. They were not seeking approval or guidance. They were informing the council of decisions already made. You would act unilaterally? High Arbiter Zenthka's voice carried a note of something that might have been panic. Without consensus? Without the approval of galactic civilization? Jake's expression softened slightly, showing a glimpse of the diplomat he had been trained to be. We would prefer to act with council support, but we will not stand by and watch civilizations be devoured while committees debate the moral implications of self-defense. The Devourers will reach the inner systems within 2 weeks, Lisa added. If they maintain their current pace of consumption, they will be approaching the core systems within a month. This station, this beautiful monument to galactic cooperation, has no defenses. It would be consumed in hours. The chamber erupted again, but this time the chaos was different. Where before there had been moral outrage, now there was raw fear. The peaceful species were beginning to understand that their philosophical objections to violence were meaningless in the face of an enemy that would kill them regardless. Commander Vexthul stood, his imposing form commanding attention. The humans offer to fight our battles for us. They offer to stain their souls with violence so that ours may remain clean. This is not conquest or aggression. This is sacrifice. Or it is manipulation, accused a crystalline delegate. Perhaps the humans seek to use this crisis to establish themselves as galactic protectors. Perhaps this entire situation serves their expansionist goals. Jake turned to face the accuser, his expression showing a weariness that seemed to age him years and seconds. What would we gain? Burned worlds? Empty space? The gratitude of species that fear and despise us? We already have everything we need in human space. We ask for nothing except the chance to prevent genocide. Lisa stepped closer to her partner, presenting a united front against the accusations. Captain Morrison speaks truth. Humanity gains nothing from this except the knowledge that we prevented the destruction of galactic civilization, and the burden of being forever known as the species that saved the galaxy through violence. High Arbiter Zenthka dimmed to almost nothing, his crystalline form barely visible in the chamber's soft lighting. When he spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. You offered to become the monsters so that we do not have to. We offered to remain the monsters we have always been, Jake corrected gently, so that you can continue to be the beautiful, peaceful beings you have become. The silence that followed was absolute. In that moment, every being in the chamber understood the true horror of their situation. They need. The news spread across the galaxy faster than light itself. Within hours of the council session, every major civilization knew that the humans had offered to fight the Devourers. More terrifying still, they knew that humanity had been preparing for this war while the rest of the galaxy debated philosophical approaches to genocide. On the crystal worlds of the Harmony Collective, entire cities went dark as their inhabitants retreated into meditation chambers, seeking to process the horrifying reality that their peaceful existence depended on the goodwill of apex predators. The concept that humans had been quietly building weapons of mass destruction while attending diplomatic functions was beyond their comprehension. In the floating cities of the gas giant Federation, Ambassador Kill9's report triggered emergency sessions among the eldest beings. They had witnessed the rise and fall of civilizations across millions of years. But never had they encountered a species that could speak so casually of extinction while offering protection in the same breath. Dr. Lisa Hamilton sat in her temporary quarters aboard Harmony Station, watching the galactic news feeds with a mixture of fascination and concern. Every major network was running analysis pieces about humanity, and what they were discovering terrified them. Research teams were diving into human history, uncovering layer after layer of warfare, survival, and technological advancement driven by conflict. "Captain Morrison," she called to her companion who was studying tactical displays on his personal terminal. "You need to see this. They have discovered our history." Jake looked up from his analysis of devourer movement patterns and focused on the news display. An alien historian, its tentacled form writhing with obvious distress, was explaining human warfare to a horrified audience. "In just the past 1,000 years," the historian warbled, "humans have engaged in over 1,500 major conflicts. They have developed weapons capable of destroying their entire planet multiple times over. They have created military doctrines for fighting in space, underwater, underground, and in dimensions that most species cannot even perceive." The display shifted to show human military equipment, warships designed not for exploration or trade, but specifically for destroying other ships. Weapons that could crack planetary crusts. Defensive systems that could turn entire star systems into killing fields. It was the technological evolution of a species that had never stopped expecting to fight for its survival. "Look at this," the historian continued, bringing up images of human soldiers. "They voluntarily undergo physical and mental conditioning designed to suppress their survival instincts in favor of completing military objectives. They train to fight even when outnumbered, outgunned, and facing certain death." Jake winced at the analysis. Seen through alien eyes, human military culture appeared absolutely barbaric. The commentators spoke of human soldiers with the same tone they might use to describe particularly vicious, predatory animals. Lisa changed the channel, finding another network that was analyzing human psychology. A team of alien scientists had somehow obtained human entertainment media and were studying it with growing horror. "They create fictional scenarios of conflict and violence for entertainment," one researcher explained to its shocked audience. "Their popular culture is filled with stories of war, survival, and individuals overcoming impossible odds through violence and determination. Even their children's stories," added another scientist, "contain themes that would traumatize adult members of most civilized species. Tales of heroes who solve problems through combat, protagonists who face death without fear, and conflicts resolved through strength rather than understanding." The emergency communication alert sounded, interrupting the broadcast. Jake answered, immediately seeing Commander Vex Thul's familiar form materialize in the hologram. "Humans," the hexapod warrior clicked with obvious urgency. "The situation deteriorates rapidly. 3 more systems have gone dark since yesterday. The Devourers accelerate their advance, but that is not why I contact you." "What has happened?" Lisa asked, noting the unusual agitation in the commander's posture. "Panic," Vex Thul replied bluntly. 17 species have initiated emergency evacuation protocols, not from the Devourers, but from human space. They fear that if humanity defeats this threat, you will turn your weapons on the rest of the galaxy. Jake felt something cold settle in his stomach. "They think we are planning conquest." "They think you are capable of conquest," the commander corrected, "and they are correct. The research into human military capabilities has revealed that your species could probably defeat any 3 civilizations simultaneously, even without the weapons you have developed for the Devourer threat." Lisa pulled up the galactic communication networks, watching as emergency broadcasts spread across hundreds of worlds. Species that had never considered the possibility of war were suddenly fortifying their homeworlds and organizing defensive alliances. "The Crystal Harmony has asked the Council to place restrictions on human military movement," Vex Thul continued. "The Plant Confederation wants human diplomatic immunity revoked. Even some of my own people suggest that humanity poses a greater long-term threat than the Devourers." "This is insane," Jake muttered, watching reports of alien fleets repositioning to defensive postures around human space. "We offered to help them, and they respond by treating us like invaders. It is not insane, Lisa said quietly, her scientific mind analyzing the situation with clinical detachment. It is logical. They have just discovered that they share the galaxy with a species capable of extinction-level violence. From their perspective, we are as dangerous as the Devourers. The communication system chimed again, this time carrying an official message from High Arbiter Zenth Ka. His crystalline form appeared pale and flickering, as if he had not recovered from the shock of the previous day's revelations. Captain Morrison, Dr. Hamilton, he began formally. The Council has been in emergency session since your departure yesterday. We must discuss the implications of human military intervention before any decisions are made. High Arbiter, Jake responded carefully. While you discuss implications, the Devourers continue their advance. Every hour of delay costs billions of lives. We understand the urgency, Zenth Ka replied, his form pulsing with agitation. But we must also consider what happens after the Devourer threat is eliminated. If humanity possesses the military capability to destroy the Devourers, what prevents you from using that same capability against the rest of galactic civilization? The question hung in the air like an accusation. Lisa leaned forward, her diplomatic training warring with her growing frustration. High Arbiter, humanity has coexisted peacefully with galactic civilization for over a century. We have honored every treaty, respected every border, and contributed to galactic prosperity. What evidence do you have that we pose any threat to peaceful species? The evidence is your capability itself, the High Arbiter replied sadly. A species that can casually discuss the extinction of the Devourers could just as easily discuss the extinction of any other species that displeases them. Jake felt his military discipline crack slightly. So your solution is to let the Devourers consume the galaxy rather than accept help from a species you find frightening? You would rather die with your moral purity intact than live with the knowledge that dangerous beings protected you? The Council seeks a third option, Zenth Ka explained. Perhaps if humanity shared its military technology with other species, we could mount a coordinated defense without relying solely on human forces. Lisa exchanged a look with Jake, seeing her own disbelief reflected in his expression. High Arbiter, the weapons we have developed require not just technology but tactical doctrine, training, and coordination that takes years to master. Even if we provided complete specifications, no peaceful species could implement them effectively in the time available. Moreover, Jake added grimly, giving weapons of mass destruction to species that have no experience with warfare would be far more dangerous than keeping them under human control. At least we understand the responsibility that comes with such power. Commander Vex Thule, who had been listening to the exchange, spoke up. The humans speak wisdom. My people have warrior traditions, but even we could not master their weapons quickly enough to matter. The choice remains simple: accept human protection or face extinction. There must be another way, Zenth Ka insisted, his crystalline form flickering with desperate hope. Some solution that does not require us to place our trust in beings capable of such terrible violence. The emergency alert sounded again, interrupting the conversation with news that made all their philosophical debates irrelevant. The Devourers had reached the middle systems. The Altair Collective, one of the galaxy's oldest and most peaceful civilizations, was under attack. Jake stood, his decision made. High Arbiter, with respect, the time for debate has ended. Human fleets are moving to intercept the Devourers regardless of Council approval. We will not stand by and watch billions die while you decide whether our help is philosophically acceptable. Captain Morrison, Zenth Ka began, but Jake cut him off. The galaxy wanted to know what humanity would do in this situation. Now you know. We fight. We win. We protect those who cannot protect themselves. And if that terrifies you more than the prospect of extinction. The first human warships emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Altair system, like predators materializing from the darkness. Captain Jake Morrison watched from the bridge of the command vessel, Retribution, as his fleet took defensive positions around the besieged worlds. The sight that greeted them was both magnificent and terrifying. Dozens of Devourer entities swarmed through the system, their massive forms dwarfing even the largest human dreadnoughts. They moved with purposeful hunger, consuming everything in their path: planetary defense platforms, civilian ships, even the metallic debris of destroyed vessels disappeared into their shifting forms. "All ships, this is Morrison," Jake broadcast on the command frequency. "You know the drill. Target the feeding appendages first, disrupt their cohesion fields, then concentrate fire on the core masses. No heroics, no individual glory. We fight as one or we die as fools." Dr. Lisa Hamilton, monitoring the engagement from Harmony Station, watched the tactical displays with clinical fascination. The human fleet moved with a coordination that was alien to galactic military doctrine. Every ship knew its role. Every weapon system had a specific target. Every maneuver served the larger strategy. The battle began with a coordinated strike that would have been impossible for any other galactic species. Human weapons designed specifically for this engagement fired in perfect synchronization. Energy beams tuned to disrupt Devourer cellular structure struck simultaneously across multiple targets. For the first time since their rampage began, the Devourers recoiled. Their feeding appendages writhed in apparent pain as human weapons found their mark. Several of the smaller entities actually retreated, their forms flickering as their cohesion fields destabilized. But the victory came at a cost. 3 human destroyers were caught by a massive Devourer that had been feigning damage. Their brave crews bought precious seconds for the fleet to reposition. But those seconds cost over 2,000 lives. "Target the big one," Jake ordered, his voice carrying the cold fury of a man who had lost too many good people to count. "All heavy units concentrate fire. Make it hurt." The human dreadnoughts unleashed weapons that had never been tested in combat. Quantum disruption cannons tore holes in space itself. Gravitational lance arrays twisted the fabric of reality. Molecular dissolution beams reduced matter to component atoms. The massive Devourer entity convulsed as the combined firepower struck its core mass. For a moment it seemed invulnerable, its form absorbing the incredible energies being directed at it. Then, with a flash of light that could be seen across the system, it simply ceased to exist. The remaining Devourers, seeing one of their largest destroyed, began to retreat. But Jake was not about to let them escape to threaten other worlds. "All units, pursuit formation. We follow them back to whatever hole they crawled out of, and we make sure they never crawl out again." The hunt lasted 6 hours and stretched across 3 star systems. When it was over, the Devourer swarm that had consumed dozens of worlds was nothing but scattered particles drifting in space. But the cost to humanity had been severe. 12 ships lost, over 8,000 crew members dead or missing. As the human fleet regrouped, rescue operations began throughout the Altair system. Billions of alien civilians emerged from shelters and hiding places, their relief evident despite the language barriers. They had witnessed something unprecedented, a force that could stop the unstoppable. Back on Harmony Station, the council chambers were silent as reports of the human victory arrived. High Arbiter Zenthka's crystalline form had regained some of its brightness, but his voice carried a weight of realization that changed everything. "The humans have done what we believed impossible," he announced to the assembled representatives. "They have defeated entities that consumed entire worlds. They have saved billions of lives. And they have proven that sometimes violence is the only answer to violence." Ambassador Kill 9, his gaseous form still agitated from the recent revelations about human capabilities, spoke with obvious reluctance. "The philosophical implications are staggering. If beings like the Devourers exist, then perhaps our peaceful evolution has been possible only because we have been fortunate enough to avoid them." Commander Vex Thule, the only representative who had supported the humans from the beginning, stood with obvious satisfaction. "The galaxy has learned an important lesson today. Peace is not a natural state. Peace is something that must be protected, sometimes by those willing to be violent on its behalf." When Jake and Lisa returned to the station 3 days later, they found a galaxy transformed. The fear was still there, perhaps stronger than before. But alongside it was something new. A grudging recognition that humanity's violence served a purpose beyond mere destruction. Their escort to the council chambers was different this time. Instead of curious aliens maintaining careful distance, they found themselves surrounded by representatives seeking to express gratitude they could barely articulate. Many had never considered the concept of owing their lives to beings they feared. High Arbiter Zenthka greeted them with a formal ceremony that had been hastily created for the occasion. Captain Morrison, Dr. Hamilton, you have saved galactic civilization. The Council has voted to offer humanity a permanent position in galactic governance, with full authority over matters of defense and security. Jake studied the offer carefully, recognizing both the honor and the burden it represented. High Arbiter, we accept the responsibility, but we want to be clear about what this means. Humanity will serve as the galaxy's shield against threats that cannot be reasoned with or negotiated away. We will be the monsters that keep worse monsters at bay. We understand, the High Arbiter replied, his form pulsing with resigned acceptance. And we are grateful, even as we acknowledge our fear of what you represent. Lisa stepped forward, her scientific mind already working on the implications of their new role. There will need to be protocols established, early warning systems, coordination between human military forces and galactic civilian authorities. We cannot protect what we cannot detect in time. All of this will be arranged, Zenthka assured them. The galaxy recognizes that our survival may depend on maintaining capabilities we find morally repugnant. It is a contradiction we must learn to live with. Over the following weeks, the new reality settled into place. Human military bases appeared throughout galactic space, their stark utilitarian design contrasting sharply with the flowing architecture preferred by peaceful species. Defense coordination centers were established, staffed jointly by human tacticians and alien scholars. The relationship was not comfortable for anyone involved. Alien civilians continued to fear human soldiers, even as they appreciated their protection. Human military personnel struggled with the knowledge that their very presence terrified the beings they had sworn to defend. But it worked. When probe ships detected devourer entities approaching the outer rim 6 months later, human fleets were in position within hours. The threat was eliminated before it could consume a single world. The galaxy barely noticed, which was exactly how Jake preferred it. A year after the crisis, Jake and Lisa walked through the peaceful corridors of Harmony Station, noting how different their reception had become. Aliens still stepped aside when they approached, but the fear was now mixed with respectful acknowledgement. Children of various species watched them with curiosity rather than terror. "Do you think we did the right thing?" Lisa asked as they paused before a viewing window that showed the beautiful vista of galactic space beyond. Jake considered the question carefully. "We saved trillions of lives and preserved a civilization based on peace and cooperation. But we also changed humanity's place in the galaxy forever. We are no longer the newcomers seeking acceptance. We are the guardians that everyone needs but no one wants to think about." "The burden of being necessary but feared," Lisa mused. "I suppose there are worse fates." Commander Vex Thule approached them, his martial bearing unchanged despite the peaceful setting. "Humans. The perimeter sensors have detected something interesting at the galactic edge. Not devourers, but something else. Something that does not respond to communication attempts." Jake felt the familiar weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders. How big? Unknown. But it moves with purpose toward inhabited space. The Council requests human evaluation of the threat level. Lisa exchanged a glance with Jake, seeing her own resignation reflected in his eyes. Their war against the Devourers had ended, but their role as the galaxy's protectors was just beginning. There would always be another threat, another crisis that required the violent solutions only humanity could provide. "Understood, Commander," Jake replied. "We will investigate and respond as necessary." As they prepared to leave the station once again, Jake reflected on how much had changed since their first invitation to the Council. They had arrived as representatives of a barely tolerated species from a death world. They were departing as the acknowledged guardians of galactic civilization. The peaceful species of the galaxy could continue their philosophical debates, their artistic endeavors, their cultural exchanges. They could maintain their moral purity and their beautiful ideals because someone else was willing to be the monster when monsters were needed. Humanity had found its place among the stars, not as the Ba.